No-fault coverage is something that was created a long time ago by the insurance companies, in which every party's insurance company pays for their own medical bills. So it doesn't matter who's at fault. If I have an insurance company and I am injured in an accident, my auto insurance company is going to pay my initial medical bills. It's capped at $10,000 in most situations, and they only pay 80% of the bill after deductible. So it's a very limited coverage. It's also called personal injury protection, or PIP coverage. In the event you're involved in a crash, your insurance company by law is going to be responsible for your initial medical bills. Maybe it's the ambulance, maybe it's the paramedics, maybe it's the hospital, the emergency room. Those bills are going to be submitted to your own insurance company. And then the balance, because oftentimes if you go to a hospital, you have CT scans, you need something more significant, those medical bills can be $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. PIP coverage, no-fault coverage, is going to be a drop in the bucket. What you're going to be left with is unpaid medical bills. You'll also be dealing with health insurance, because health insurance does not want to pay for an auto accident. They want to have the auto insurance companies pay. Also, most health insurance carriers, if they do pay for anything related to a crash, then they maintain what's called a right of subrogation, or a lien against the recovery that has to be honored and paid back. So PIP coverage is somewhat valuable coverage. It does pay initial, immediate medical bills, usually within 30 days from your own auto insurance carrier. But as I said earlier, it pays only 80% after deductible, and it's capped at $10,000. It's very, very common that our clients or an individual who's injured in a crash, that their personal injury protection benefits will not be enough to take care of all of their medical bills or to take care of all of their treatment. I would say more than 90% of the time that's the case. And then you're left with unpaid medical bills. You're left with a situation in which you have to make a claim against the other party's insurance carrier. They are not going to pay your medical bills up front. They are going to want you to incur all of the medical bills, and then at the end, they're only going to pay you if you sign a release. It's very unfortunate in our system, because personal injury protection coverage only pays a portion and a small portion of the medical care that's necessary. Oftentimes individuals go without medical treatment and have unpaid medical bills that are ultimately their responsibility. I would say better than 95% of our clients, unfortunately, have treatment, injuries, medical needs that far exceed the available personal injury protection coverage, the no-fault coverage. Personal injury protection coverage is somewhat of an outdated system. When it was created 50, 60 years ago, $10,000 went a lot further towards medical care than it does today. So unfortunately, unless you have unlimited funds at your disposal, you're willing to spend your own money for your medical care, or you're willing to go through your health insurance and pay them back out of any settlement, the frustrating thing is you have to go through the at-fault party's insurance carrier. In our system, there are pitfalls and there are obstacles that were created by great lobbyists on behalf of the insurance industry that sometimes people fall into. It prevents them from receiving a full accounting of their recovery. And that's why it's so important to have legal representation, a firm that only does personal injury, that specializes in this form of law, because the insurance companies, they have their own experts and their own attorneys that are specializing in handling their side of the case. So unfortunately, in Florida, there was a law that was created that required an individual who was injured in a crash to do certain things within 14 days. And if those boxes weren't checked, if those steps weren't taken, then they were barred from making a claim, barred from receiving benefits that they had paid for every month through their insurance company. There are also elements of any potential settlement in which there are liens that have to be paid back to maintain a good standing with health insurance, sometimes with medical payments coverage. And then also there are approvals that have to happen. If you have any settlement with the other party's insurance company, you have to get approval through your own insurance company in order to maintain the benefits that you purchased. This is another recent development where the legislature was persuaded by insurance lobbyists to take our personal injury protection coverage that is usually $10,000 and cap it at $2,500. And the way they do that is they require a medical doctor. Now, it can't be a chiropractor. It requires a certain type of doctor to indicate what's called an emergent medical condition, a diagnosis that would then allow that injured party to have access to the other 75% of their personal injury protection coverage that they paid for every month in their premiums. In order to receive a recovery from an insurance company or an at-fault party, you have to prove their negligence. And in our state, we apply a percentage of negligence because many times it's not clear-cut. There may be situations where it's totally obvious to one person because they were rear-ended and therefore they believe the other party should pay for their medical care. But that other party and that insurance company gets to argue that maybe it was a sudden stop, or maybe there was some other party, some third party that was also responsible. In our system, the jury gets to assign a percentage. They can assign 99%, 1%, 50-50, whatever it may be. In our system, we have to prove that the other party was at least 50% responsible in order to receive any recovery whatsoever. So when you apply those damages, and the damages sometimes can be catastrophic, millions and millions of dollars, when you apply that percentage to the damages, that becomes the recovery. And so long as it's 50% or more, then we can make a recovery. When it's less than 50%, the legislature has decided that injured party gets zero. If we can prove that the at-fault party is more than 50% responsible, then we receive that percentage of our damages. 14-day requirement is specific to certain coverages, things like personal injury protection coverage. In order to have access to that, in order to receive those benefits for medical care, you have to initiate treatment within 14 days. Now, what I tell clients is don't wait till the 13th day. If you have injuries, you have pain, you have problems, you're better off to seek medical care right off the bat because an insurance company is going to use whatever they can to argue against you later. So if you wait 2 days, they're going to argue that you should have gone the same day of the crash. Even though we have a 14-day window, don't give it 14 days, don't give it 13 days. Now that is drastically different from the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations in negligence cases was 4 years for a long time. And in March of 23, they changed it to 2 years. And that is an absolute bar against any recovery whatsoever. So what that means is that if an accident happens, you have exactly 2 years from that crash in order to bring a lawsuit against the individual that caused the crash. And that's every potentially liable party. If you don't do that, let's say you file the lawsuit 2 years and a day from the crash, you will not be able to receive any compensation for any of your damages. Liability is ultimately determined by a jury or a judge. The information and the evidence that the judge or the jury may rely on is usually evident at the scene of the crash. Unfortunately, the officer's opinion, the citation, the ticket is not necessarily evidence. We want the jury and the judge to make the ultimate decision, but the information, the evidence that the officer relies upon is available and would be presented to a jury. In most cases that we handle, so long as we get involved early and we have investigators who are ready 24/7, we can gather the information that's necessary to make sure that even though an insurance company is almost always going to argue any opportunity they have, they're going to argue liability. If we're able to gain that evidence, secure that evidence for our clients, then it prevents an insurance company from being successful when they argue liability. Immediately after a crash, we tell everybody, obviously the most important thing is to make sure that you're in a safe place, whether it be in the vehicle, getting out of the vehicle, getting off the road. Once you've confirmed that you're in a safe place, reached out to law enforcement, called 911, medical attention on the way, then the best thing to do is to secure any evidence you can at the scene. Maybe it's taking pictures of crunched up vehicles. Maybe it's getting information in terms of the whereabouts, the surroundings, other individuals who are involved, potential witnesses. And then I really do believe the most important thing you can do is call an attorney. I promise you, as soon as that claim is called in to the other party's insurance company, they have legal representation, they have trained professionals handling that case, and you do too. Your medical care, your well-being, your employment, your life is too important not to have someone looking out for you, someone who understands the rules, the obligations, the predicament that you're in. I would encourage anyone who's in that situation to make sure they reach out to an attorney, to a law office in their area that handles only these types of cases. Not someone who does a little bit of family law, does a little bit of criminal law, does a little bit of this, a little bit of that. No, someone whose firm is dedicated to handling the case that they have and nothing else. The people in our community, the people of Florida, deserve that kind of attention, that kind of service, and a law firm that's dedicated to making sure they are protected and that they recover everything they're entitled to receive. If you've been injured in an accident, we want to look out for what's best for you more than any insurance company will. That's why it's so important to call us immediately after the crash. Put our team to work, trained professionals, many with insurance industry experience. We know the tricks of the trade. We'll make sure that you're taken care of.